that most distraction, it turns out, is not spurred by the external triggers at all. Most distraction does not start outside of us, but rather starts from within. The root cause of why we become distracted is because we feel these internal triggers, these uncomfortable emotional states that we seek to escape. So if we're going to answer Plato's question of why do we get distracted, why do we do things against our better judgment, we have to start one layer deeper with first principles of why do we do anything? What's the nature of human motivation? And when you think about it, most people will tell you some version of carrots and sticks, that it's about the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. This is Freud's pleasure principle.
Yeah.
But neurologically speaking, that's not true. That in fact, we do not do things in the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. That neurologically speaking, we only do things for one reason, and that is to avoid discomfort. Physiologically, we know this is true. If you go outside and it's cold, that's not comfortable. What do? You put on a coat. And when you go back inside, now it's too hot, that's not comfortable, you take it off. If you're hungry, you feel hunger pangs, you eat. And when you're stuffed, oh, that doesn't feel good, you stop eating. So physiologically, we feel this all the time. This is called the homeostatic response. The same rules apply with psychological sensations, not just with physiological sensations. So when you're feeling lonely, check Facebook. When you're uncertain, you Google. When you're bored, check the news, check sports scores, check Reddit, Pinterest, whatever. All of these things cater to these uncomfortable sensations. So that means if all human behavior is spurred by a desire to escape discomfort, that means, as you said, time management is pain management. And so this is why it is the most important first step, that with all the ways you can, life hack yourself and all of the guru's technique du jour, fundamentally, if we don't deal with this fact that we are trying to escape an uncomfortable sensation when we become distracted, if we don't understand it and learn new methods to cope with that discomfort, we're always going to be distracted by one thing or another. This was a study done by Timothy Wilson where they put people in a room and they said there's nothing in this room to do except for we're going to put a band on your arm and it's going to be connected to a button that you can press on. This button will give you a painful electrical shock. Something like 60% of men and about 20% of women administer the shock. That we are so uncomfortable doing nothing that we just want to feel something. We need some kind of sensation. This is by design. Our species is designed to be perpetually perturbed, right? We have this instinct of feeling bored to prod us to go do something, to go search, to find better resources, to improve our lot in life. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. That we can harness that, right? This is the same impulse that helps us develop life-changing medicine, helps us invent new things, helps us shoot for the moon. It comes from that desire for more. So I don't think the answer to all of our problems is to not want, to not crave, to not desire. I think the answer is to channel these internal triggers towards traction rather than distraction. I mean, this is an age-old question. When we know what to do, why don't we just do it? And particularly in today's age where we have the world's information at our fingertips, we don't have the excuse of not knowing what to do anymore. Who doesn't know basically how to lose weight? Okay, maybe the specifics, but we basically know that chocolate cake is not as healthy as a healthy salad. Who doesn't know that? Who doesn't know that if you want to have better relationships with people, you have to be fully present with them? Who doesn't know that if you want to do better at your job, you have to do the work, especially the hard stuff that other people don't want to do? We know these things. So there's no excuse anymore to say, well, I just didn't know how. Google is right there for anyone to use. What we're lacking is the ability to follow through. We're lacking the ability to avoid distraction. Getting ahead in life is not just about doing the right things. It's about avoiding not doing the wrong things. I work with a lot of folks who have this problem of when they get to work, they say they're going to do something. They say they're going to work on that big project. They're going to stop procrastinating and do that thing that they've been planning to do right after they check email, right after they scroll that Slack channel, right after they do that quick thing that they have to talk with a colleague real quick. And so 30, 45 minutes later, they still haven't started to do the thing they plan to do.
Right, and the other thing is technically work.
Exactly.
But it's not the thing they need
I call it pseudo work.
Right,
right?
Pseudo work.
I kind of need to check email, right? I kind of need to do that stuff. But if I plan to do something else at that time, it is just as much of a distraction. So anything can become a distraction as well. And the reason this is so pernicious is that we are slaves now to the urgent at the sacrifice of the important when we do that. And in today's age, where technology is so pervasive and so persuasive, I mean, it is designed to be persuasive, and we want it to be persuasive, we want products to be engaging, then it's easier than ever to get distracted. This narrative that I'm really scared of, that we hear these days, that technology is hijacking your brain, that it's addicting everyone, not only is it scientifically not true, because let's think about it for a minute. Lots of things are potentially addictive and don't addict everyone, right? A lot of us have a glass of wine with dinner. We're not all alcoholics.
Yeah, even drugs.
Absolutely. Some people do become addicted to technology because any analgesic, anything that solves pain, is potentially addictive. What's really harmful is when we start telling ourselves this narrative, that this technology is hijacking our brains, that what am I gonna do? My kids are crazy because these video games are doing it to them. What does this lead to? It leads to learned helplessness. This condition where we think, well, there's nothing we can do, why even try? And now it becomes true that these technologies are actually persuading us in ways we don't want because of our beliefs about them. One of the things that people do that doesn't work is strict abstinence. Now, strict abstinence is when you tell yourself, I am not going to do that thing, right? Just say no, like Nancy Reagan told us in the 1980s. And it turns out that strict abstinence for many behaviors backfires, particularly behaviors that are very difficult to avoid completely. So, if you're a recovering drug addict, you might be able to abstain completely from a substance you abused. But how do you abstain from food if you're on a diet? We have to eat. How do you abstain from technology these days? I mean, it's imperative to do our jobs. We can't just say, stop using email for 30 days, you'll lose your job, you'll get fired. So for those type of potential distractions, we don't want to just abstain, and just to dive into, because I think the research is so interesting, when we do abstain, when we tell ourselves, no, absolutely not, it's almost like pulling on a rubber band. That when you pull on a rubber band and you stretch it, and you let go, it doesn't just go back to where you started, it ricochets even further. And that's what happens when we employ strict abstinence. We tell ourselves, don't do it. Okay, fine, I'll give in. And that sensation of relieving the discomfort of telling yourself not to is itself pleasurable. This is a big reason why smokers get addicted to cigarettes. Smokers, when they are mindful about the experience of smoking, they actually rate it as not pleasurable. It's stinky, it's not very pleasurable. There's nothing inherently pleasurable. Nicotine does make you feel a certain way, but many smokers don't actually report it makes them feel good, it just makes them feel something. What gets them to keep smoking is not only the physiological effects of the nicotine, what more so gets them addicted is telling themselves, don't do it. Finally, I smoke, and now I'm relieved of the discomfort of having to tell myself, don't do it. So strict abstinence oftentimes backfires.
Yeah, this is white knuckling it. If anyone's tried to do it, it's first of all massively distracting, a lot of brain power, and then it rarely works.
Right, because when we finally do give in, we are wiring our neural circuitry to expect, oh, when I feel the discomfort of not wanting something, giving in makes it feel so pleasurable, not because the behavior itself is pleasurable, but because it relieves us of the discomfort of telling ourselves no. So instead of you telling yourself no, what you can do is employ a technique like this 10-minute rule, where here's how it works. You tell yourself that you can give in to any distraction, whether that distraction is checking email when you want to work on a big project, whether that you're tempted to Google something or eat that piece of chocolate cake you don't want to have. You can give in to that distraction in 10 minutes. 10 minutes of doing what psychologists call surfing the urge. When it comes to these uncomfortable emotional states, we know that emotions don't last forever. In the moment, we think they will last forever. That's how the brain spurs us to do something about it, right? It spurs us to action by making us think, I don't want to feel this way anymore. But logically, rationally, when we think about it, emotions are like waves. They crest and they subside. So we can surf these urges like a surfer riding a wave. So for 10 minutes, what I oftentimes do, I'll take out my phone, I'll say, set a timer for 10 minutes, I'll put my phone down. And my job for those 10 minutes is to simply reflect on that sensation and talk to myself the way I would talk to a good friend, with self-compassion. So what many people do when they tell themselves no, when they try and not get distracted, they fit into two buckets, the blamers or the shamers. The blamers say, oh, it's my phone that got me distracted, it's Facebook, it's YouTube, it's Slacks, that thing got me distracted. The shamers, this is the category I used to fall into, say there's something wrong with me. Maybe I'm not cut out for this job. I'm lazy, I have a short attention span, there's something wrong with me, right? And we shame ourselves. And of course, that's not helpful either, Because where does this shame spiral lead? It causes more internal triggers, which makes us even more likely to seek a distraction to escape that uncomfortable emotional state.
Yeah.
So how do you diffuse it? You don't become contemptuous, you become curious. So for 10 minutes, your job is to reflect on that sensation, to feel that sensation with curiosity rather than contempt, or to get back to the task at hand. And 9 times out of 10, by just setting that 10-minute rule and saying, I can give into that distraction, I can have that chocolate cake, I can go check, my email or Google, whatever it is that I am tempted to do, but in 10 minutes. It's an incredibly effective and simple technique.